Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Xobin Talks, where we explore the ideas, strategies, and leadership shaping the future of work. I'm your host, Nikita, and today we are joined by someone who has truly influenced the global HR and workforce strategy landscape. Our guest today is Ron Thomas, who is a managing director at Strategy Focused Group, globally recognized CHRO, workforce strategist, advisor to CEOs and boards, and one of the top 50 HR leaders shaping the future of work. Ron, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
We are equally excited, Ron. You bring such a unique global perspective to HR leadership. So now let's dive in to the questions. To begin with, we would love to understand your journey. How did you get started in HR and workforce
Mm,
strategy? And what inspired you to pursue this path globally?
yeah, my career was not linear. It was a lot of left turns, right turns, U turns. Started out of university, and I started working with IBM in New York City in sales. And I was there for a little over a year, and then I bought a business and I ran a business and those kinds of things. But what happened for me to get into human resources, I was able to sell myself and get a job at IBM as a trainer on Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office was just coming out, so that dates it a little bit. And we train companies in New York City as to how to utilize Microsoft Office in their daily work, kind of like AI is coming through now, but we'll get to that. So that started everything from there. And I was there for almost 10 years before they closed that business. And I left there and went to work for Martha Stewart, which was groundbreaking because of the fact it was a startup and we didn't have a game plan and we just worked it. And I started there as a trainer, building a training department. And when I left there, about 9, 10 years later, I was the vice president of human resources. So I've seen it all. But I realized one thing from working there is that you have to have an engaged workforce. And we were able to do that. Left there, took a break after the situation happened. I'll leave it at that. And then I went to Xerox, and I was there for a little over a year, and I get an email from a search firm in Saudi Arabia asking whether I would be interested in coming to Saudi as a chief human resource officer. I jumped at the opportunity to get back into the thicket of things versus consulting. And I moved to Saudi Arabia as that in that role, and I was there for a little over a year. But what happens lots of times on a job, they tell you the job is going to be XYZ, you get there and it has no relation to that. And it did not work out. And I decided to leave and I started searching and I ended up as CEO for a great place to work in Dubai, where I'm recording from now. And that started everything with me globally as well as being based in Dubai. I was at that role for a little over a year. Then I pulled out and I started Strategy Focus Group. And that was, I'm going to say, maybe 9, 10 years ago. And that's the story.
That is such an incredible journey you have, Ron. So you have worked across multinational corporations, governments, and high growth companies globally. What major shift you have observed in workforce strategy over the last decades?
Uh, I'm going to go back maybe 2 decades. I'll tell you why. Because work, the world of work was static. You 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And that was the way that we worked. Henry Ford, 1929, was the founder of the 5 day work week, Monday through Friday, weekends off. Because before that, there was none. People just basically worked 7 days a week. So that model worked until COVID. COVID hit, it flipped everything. So then then the internet comes in, not the internet comes in, but what I'm saying is that now we could do Zoom meetings and all these kinds of things. So what happened as a result, work had to be reconfigured. And that meant work from home, work from anywhere, and went through that crisis. Then we came out of the crisis. A lot of companies said, we're going to go back to 5 days a week. The workers said, nah, I don't think so. could we have some flexibility? Some
Absolutely.
companies were smart enough to offer flexibility. Some companies are still holding on to an era that no longer exists. So as a result of that, it kind of disrupted the entire workplace. Then who comes in? AI comes in and just totally disrupts everything. If you've watched the news lately, Oracle laid off 30,000 people a few weeks back. Meta has an announcement coming, I think, on tomorrow. 7% of their workforce is going to be laid off. But think of the positive side of AI. AstraZeneca, they certified or they developed all of their senior leaders to understand AI and bring AI fully into the organization. IKEA was going to bring in AI for customer service. And what they decided to do was to take the customer service people, reskill them as interior designers, consultants to people calling in, needing help. And that effort created 1.3 billion in additional revenue. So there's different ways to look at this, but the workforce has been disrupted and it's not going to go back to the 9 to 5, coming in every day and leaving at 5 o'clock. No, those days are over with. You can still adhere to that, but what I tell companies, you're treading in an area that's going to cause you to lose key players because people are not going to come to a job for 5 days a week when competitors are offering flexibility. That's my take.
Yeah, I think this is something every business leader listening today can relate to. The workforce has changed dramatically, but
Yeah.
many organizations are still trying to catch up, right? So, organizations today are rapidly moving towards skill first models.
Okay.
How can leaders effectively align hiring, capability building, and business strategy?
That should be number one on every board discussion. That should be number one with every C-suite. How do you AIize a workforce? And if you Google AstraZeneca, they did the same thing. They started with their senior leadership, and each one of the senior leaders in every vertical was certified throughout AI. Then they downloaded that into their functions. So finance, marketing, IT, logistics, AI department, and each division, each function was able to AI's their workforce. And as a result of that, productivity, all those things shot up, as opposed to the first step is that we're going to lay off people and try and build this product in. But meanwhile, you've affected all these people's lives. Your employee experience is gone. Your branding is shot. Nobody probably is going to be afraid to work there as a result. So all these things are happening at a pace that companies are not just there. And you hear these CEOs say, well, I'm the human side of it and all these kinds of things. Anyone that's gone to university, you know that if you were doing a research paper, you had to do the research. You had to do the research. And then you put it all together. It took you a while to do it. Well, what if you could cut that time in half? You're going to still do the research. But if you think of the product that comes out of an AI endeavor, that is a draft. You work through that draft, you fine tune it, and you put your spin on the human side into that before you deliver the final product. And that's my thought on that.
Yeah, that's such an important point because many companies focus heavily on hiring talents, but don't always think about long-term capability building.
Long term.
So, the next question is, many companies invest heavily in hiring technologies and analytics. In your view, what separates organizations that use workforce data effectively from those that simply collect data?
Okay. That's way down the road. My approach is start with strategy. Understand what the strategy is for the organization. Where's the organization headed in the next 3 to 5 years? Then you build that. First step from my side is internal mobility. I love the approach that IKEA did. They said, we're going to develop our own people into this space because the redundancy letter is the easiest thing to write.
True.
But how do you build back from the massive news media that says you're laying off 30,000 people, 40,000 people, all those kinds of things? So start with internal mobility. Your learning and development department, whether they want to believe it or not, they're the most important department in this phase of work because you're building skills and capabilities. So it starts from the board, it comes to the C suite, and then it comes down to the individual functions. I heard someone say, I asked someone in an interview, what is their AI strategy? They said, well, we told everyone to experiment. I said, to experiment, what does that mean? So everyone is going to try it here. Some people are not going to try. So you're not building a cohesive structure. Start from here, and you cascade it down throughout the organization. Even people that may be reaching an age that maybe in 5 to 10 years they're going to be out. Everyone needs to understand the capabilities of artificial intelligence because it's not going away.
True.
That's my thought.
Yeah. So I really like that perspective because technology alone doesn't create better decisions. It's
Mm,
how
mm.
it's how leaders interrupt that act and insight that makes the difference. Actually, it's not the technology alone can do it, right?
it it can't work that it can work that way. When if it works that way, you're going to lay off 30,000 people. But if it works the other way, so my thought is understanding strategy first. And I just want to mention one more point. If I understand strategy, and I understand the job families, the job family is could be a AI engineer or whatever it would be. Understand that job family, get that job family to help you build a learning and development strategy, possibly as instructors, and start building it in-house. Start building it in-house. You can still go out and get outside people, but if I'm in finance in this particular region and my company's logistics, that could be a different financial protocol. But if I had one of the chief accountants or financial officers work with the learning and development team, we can build our own product and we can develop our own people. Internal mobility is the key, as well as job family analysis. And I mentioned that because you mentioned data. The data on job families, you look at turnover, you look at the challenge that they're going to have as it relates to learning and development. There's a whole lot of issues that could come up under a job family.
True, absolutely right, Ron. So now it's time to the next question. Leadership development has been central to your work. What are the biggest leadership gaps organizations must solve to build future ready teams?
It starts with the leader. Companies have, for a long time, have been promoting hiring leaders based on technical skills. I'm great technically, but I'm awful as it relates to people. There was a project that was done years ago. You can Google it if anybody's listening. A Project Oxygen. They were the first ones to tackle that. It was a project through Google, and they looked at what makes a great manager. And the key that came from that was technical skills plus people skills. So I'd have to be an engineer technically to manage another team of engineers. But I would want to have an engineer who's people aligned, quote, because the people aligned person is going understands how to build a relationship, understands how to possibly mentor people. Possibly we could put those new leaders with those skills into a coaching or mentoring program. And we began the process of developing our own. And when we do that, what we're doing is connecting the entire organization to the strategy, to the job families, to the department, to the function. It's kind of a diagnostic approach. If you go to the doctor and you tell the doctor your shoulder hurts, they're not going to write you a prescription just like that, or send you to therapy. They're going to ask a whole lot of questions as to why this is happening, when did it start, all those kinds of things. Then they may send you out for tests, technical side. So you combine those two, you can write a prescription. And you start from there. In 30 days, you come back and check to see where it's moving, and maybe you have to adjust that. The role inside of organization is to become the diagnostician which means that you are the physician of the organization, specifically if you're in the people side, because how do you build an engaging workforce? Because that engaging workforce is going to build organizational health, which means finances are going to be where they need to be.
Right. So leadership today is becoming even more complex because of technology is changing every second.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's time to our next question, Ron.
Go ahead.
AI is transforming hiring, workforce planning, and employee management. Where do you believe AI creates the biggest value for HR leaders, and where should human judgment remain central?
Yeah. And see, that question always comes in on the human judgment. So the example I gave before was that whatever I get back from AI, I'm working on some projects this morning, and I'm AI is working in the background as my assistant. And when that comes back, I'm going to review, go back, and I'm going to keep tweaking, tweaking, tweaking until I come up with what I consider, through my experience, a credible approach to moving it forward. So draft first, and you take that draft and you consistently go back and you filter it through the human side. There was a case of a lawyer who did an AI briefing and submitted it to the courts, and they realized that it was all AI driven. Had never thought to let me read through this. And I use it. I've been using AI for the past 6 years. As soon as I heard about it, I started trying it. So one of the things I realized is that whatever comes out, that's my first piece of research. And I take that and I began to fine tune it and make sure that if I had done the research over a period of time, this is my final product and this is what it would look like. It's not a final product. And this is why I say that we need an AI strategy in every organization. If I ask the CEO, what is your AI strategy for the organization? If I ask the board, what is your AI strategy for the organization? If I get a blank look, I'm saying you're in trouble because you're just trying to figure it out as you go along. Why not make it a strategic initiative across the entire organization, the same way that AstraZeneca approached AI? They put all of their C level leaders through that program. And as a result of that, they are moving forward. The IKEA piece that I mentioned earlier, this is the exact way they approach it. The way that Oracle and Facebook are doing it, but that's easy for me to say because I don't really understand all of the intricacies of it. But that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest conversations happening in HR
Yes,
right now. And
yes.
there's both excitement and a certain uncertainty around it again.
Mhm.
So it's time to the next question, John. HR leaders today are expected to influence business outcomes, not just manage people operations. How can HR evolve into a true strategic function within organizations?
Okay, the entire conversation we've had today focused on the business. It did not focus on HR. And for and I train HR leaders across the globe. I was in Macedonia last week, and a couple other trips that's coming up. But here's a key point: focus on the business. You've heard me mention this a few times. Focus on business strategy. Business strategy says we're here, and when we grow up, we want to be here. As an HR department, your job is to design that workforce. I've coined a term, a phrase, and I offer these courses called workforce architecture. In other words, give me the AI dilemma, give me the digital transformation, give me the new M&A project. We design people strategy. So I tell HR people, excuse me, focus on the business. HR comes next. Focus on the business. HR from the transaction admin side, that will be AI'd, if that's a term, for sure. And it's not going to be there. So focus on understanding the business, which is going to mean that you're going to have to upskill your departments. Because I speak to a lot of companies, and their HR department doesn't understand the first step of the strategic HR is what is your organization strategy? What are the major challenges you're having? If you had to explain to the C suite or the board, would you understand the language they're talking about as it relates to this digital transformation or whatever it is? So I say business first, HR second. Be steeped in strategy, not only for the business, but as well as the industry.
Absolutely. This conversation has been incredibly insightful so far. Before we wrap up, let's move into a quick rapid fire round. Just one thought that comes to your mind, Ron. It should be very short answers. All right. So, starting from the first question, one skill every HR leaders must develop for the future of work.
Uh, read, read, and relearn consistently. The first thing I check in the morning is the business news to see what happens. And if I see that a company's doing layoffs, I want to understand the business. Why would they do that? If I were in the room, what questions I would ask? I go through that every day, multiple times a day. And that way you stay sharp, consistent learning.
True. Data driven hiring or instant driven hiring? What works best for long terms?
It's a lot of talk on the data driven hiring and all those concepts of coming in. My thought is lots of times we're rushing into that. What are the skills we need? Understand the strategy first, understand where the business is headed, and then drive it through whatever protocol you're using, a system you're using. Again, that is a draft. And if it gives that to you, do we take that as 100% fact, or do we figure out a way that we synthesize? And this is why governance needs to be tied into all of this. How many times? I give an example. You know people that are extremely good at what they're doing. Maybe they got laid off. They can't get through the initial system, ATS system, to even submit a CV because it gets kicked out because they're depending on that threshold to do everything. And I have a problem with that. Now, is there a way to possibly fix that? Sure. It's a rating system possibly could work, but something has to be done and not let artificial intelligence tell you this person will not be a good fit because they've had 4 jobs in the past 8 years. That has nothing to do with it. What was the skills and capabilities they're bringing to the table?
One workforce trend organizations are still underestimating.
Analytics. If you look at I call it the DNA of the organization. What is the DNA of the organization? What are the major job families of the organization? Which job family, which function is driving strategy? So if you think of strategy as this, every piece of strategy is a bus. So if your organization has 3 pieces of strategy, you have 3 bus drivers, and on the occupants of that bus are people. That's the internal mobility that's going to be promoted, and that's the team you're going to consistently develop. And if you develop a workforce aligned around that, you're going to be prepared for the future. I think that's being overlooked a lot. Job family architecture.
That's true. What's one common mistake companies make while scaling globally?
From So there's 2 ways to look at that. So people upstairs can say we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but then it comes down to the people strategy behind it. So my way of looking at that, the people strategy people need to be in the room when this is being discussed because they understand the intricacies of maybe moving into a market in London versus someone in the upstairs saying we're just going to move into London, we're going to do this, you need people to make it work. So HR needs to be in all of those rooms for every conversation sitting around strategy. Has to be. Otherwise, you're just going to say, we're going to go, yeah, we're going to do this. And here are the KPIs for our first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and we don't make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are the foundation. Yes.
All right. One piece of advice for the next generation of HR leaders?
I'll go back to what I've been saying is that become a business person. As people will say, well, I've got an MBA in HR. And my thought is, and what does that mean? You've got a certificate, you've got a degree in HR. Do you understand the business? Do you understand business? Do you understand a P&L? Do you understand the intricacies of finance? Do you understand market strategy? Your role being HR, you're the people architect. You design the workforce. So
True.
you can't design the workforce unless you understand the strategy of the organization.
Absolutely correct.
Hmm.
So, thank you so much, Ron, for joining us today for Xobin Talks. Your insights on leadership, workforce strategy, AI, and the future of HR have been incredibly valuable. And I am sure our audience has learned a lot from this conversation. And thank you to everyone tuning in to this episode of Xobin Talks. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure you subscribe, follow, and share this episode with your network. We'll be back soon with more conversations. Until then, this is Nikita signing off from Xobin Talks. Thank you.